Growing up, I always thought my family was perfect. My mum, Sarah, was the heart of our home, a warm, nurturing presence who made even ordinary days feel special. My dad, Mark, was her steady partner, calm, dependable, and practical. Together, they created a life that felt safe and complete, but perfection has a way of breaking apart when you least expect it. When I was 16, the cracks in our family started to show. My dad began working late more often, citing important projects that couldn't wait. His phone buzzed constantly, and he would step out of the room to take calls. My mum grew quieter, her bright smile dimming. I didn't understand what was happening at first, but the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. Then, one night, everything changed. It was late, and I was in my room scrolling through social media when I heard raised voices downstairs. I crept out and sat at the top of the stairs, straining to hear the conversation. "I know about her, Mark." My mum's voice was trembling with anger and heartbreak. "How long has this been going on?" "It's not that simple, Sarah," my dad replied, defensive but undeniably guilty. I didn't need to hear the rest. The few words I caught were enough to confirm what I'd been suspecting for weeks. My dad was having an affair. The weeks that followed were a blur of silence and heartbreak. My mom did her best to shield me and my younger brother Noah from the worst of it, but there was no hiding the truth. One evening, she sat us down in the living room. Her face was calm, but her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "Your dad and I have decided to separate," she said softly. Her voice was steady, but there was an undeniable sadness behind it. "It's not what I wanted, but sometimes people drift apart." Noah burst into tears, clinging to her like his life depended on it. I sat there in stunned silence, my chest heavy with confusion and anger. I wanted to ask why she wasn't fighting harder or why she wasn't furious, but I stayed quiet. In the year that followed, our lives changed completely. My mum found a new job and moved us into a smaller but cozy apartment. My dad moved in with Amanda, the woman he'd been seeing. Meeting Amanda was like reopening a wound that hadn't healed. She was young, vibrant, and always cheerful, a stark contrast to the pain I had seen in my mum's eyes. "Hi, I'm Amanda," she said when we first met, extending her hand with an overly bright smile. I hesitated before shaking it. Noah, being only 9, quickly warmed up to her. He didn't fully understand the betrayal that had broken our family apart. But I did, and I wasn't ready to forgive. Amanda tried her best to connect with me. She'd invite me to go shopping, ask about school, and even offer to help with my homework. But I kept my answers short and avoided her as much as possible. She wasn't just a stranger, she was the reason my parents' marriage had ended. For 2 years, things remained strained. I spent weekends at my dad's house, tolerating Amanda's presence but keeping her at arm's length. Then, one quiet evening, everything changed. It was a normal night at my dad and Amanda's house. Noah was already in bed, and I was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through my phone when Amanda walked in. "Do you want to help me with the dishes?" she asked, gesturing toward the sink. I shrugged, figuring it was better than sitting in silence. We worked side by side, the sound of running water and clinking plates filling the room. After a while, Amanda broke the silence. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she said, her voice hesitant. I glanced at her, unsure of what she wanted to say. "I know I'm not your favorite person," she began, her hands trembling slightly as she washed a plate. "And I don't blame you for that. But I need to tell you something. I never wanted things to happen the way they did." I froze, unsure of how to respond. She continued, her words spilling out like a confession she'd been holding back for years. "When I met your dad, I didn't know he was married at first. By the time I found out, I was already in love with him. That doesn't excuse anything, but I need you to know that I never meant to hurt your mum, or you and Noah." Her voice cracked and tears welled up in her eyes. "I've carried that guilt with me every day. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it." For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her that no apology could undo the pain she'd caused. But another part of me saw something I hadn't noticed before: genuine remorse. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I finally said, my voice shaky. "But thank you for telling me." That night, I lay awake, replaying her words in my head. Amanda wasn't the villain I had made her out to be. She was human, flawed and regretful, just like anyone else. It didn't make what happened okay, but it helped me see her in a different. Light over time, my relationship with Amanda began to shift. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But little by little, I started to let her in. She showed me through her actions that she genuinely cared about me and Noah, not just because we were Mark's kids, but because she wanted to be part of our lives. Meanwhile, my mum, Sarah, found happiness again. She met Daniel, a kind and funny man who brought joy back into her life. Watching her smile and laugh again made it easier for me to let go of the anger I'd been holding on to for so long. One day, while visiting my dad and Amanda, she pulled me aside. "I know I've said this before," Amanda began, her eyes filled with emotion. "But I want you to know how much you mean to me. You're not just Mark's daughter, you're someone I truly care about, and I hope one day you can see me as part of your family too." Her words stayed with me. For so long I'd resisted the idea of letting her into my life, afraid it would mean betraying my mom. But I realized that forgiveness wasn't about excusing what had happened. It was about freeing myself from the anger and pain that had been weighing me down. "I think I'm ready to let go of the past," I said, my voice trembling. Her eyes filled with tears, and she smiled, a genuine smile that I hadn't seen before. Today, our blended family isn't perfect. There are still moments of tension and unresolved feelings, but there's also growth, understanding, and a willingness to move forward. My mom and Amanda may never be friends, but they've learned to coexist for the sake of Noah and me. Looking back, I've learned that life is messy and relationships are complicated. People make mistakes, sometimes big ones, but that doesn't mean they're beyond redemption. My family's story is one of heartbreak, but it's also one of healing, growth, and forgiveness. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: love isn't about being perfect. It's about owning your mistakes, making amends, and choosing to keep trying, even when it's hard. For more interesting and heartfelt stories, please subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me.